After over 25 years of marriage, we've learned that successful couples have great friendships, put each other first, and focus on light just as much as love. We believe marriage should be fun and easy.
Our goal is to share our journey with the hopes of helping others build strong, happy relationships. Join us as we continue to create our lives beyond I do.
Do you and your partner want to learn simple ways to grow closer?
Do you and your partner want to grow happier together?
Do you and your partner want to be a unified front?
Do you and your partner want to divorce-proof your marriage?
If you answer yes to these questions, you need to check out our book, Unlocking Forever, 10 Keys to a Successful Marriage Beyond I Do.
Each section focuses on a different aspect of marriage and briefly describes how we handled it in our relationship. At the end of the section, you're given an action step or key to complete with your partner.
These keys are practical steps you can immediately implement in your relationship and help you and your partner be proactive and intentional about your relationship.
You can purchase your copy on Amazon.com.
And until next time, we will holler at y'all. We are not marriage counselors, nor are we mental health professionals. We're just simply sharing y'all how we navigated through our marriage. Now, on with the show. We'd like to welcome you back to the Beyond I Do podcast. We have a special guest with us today by the name of Dr. George Ackerman. Dr. George Ackerman comes to us to discuss Parkinson's disease. He has journeyed from being an attorney to a caregiver for his mother, who passed from Parkinson's disease in 2020. And he's become an advocate for her, for people who family members suffer with Parkinson's disease, as well as caregivers and those alike. He supports the Parkinson's community, and he's here to share with us some of the attributes of dealing with a relative and fighting the fight for Parkinson's disease. So we'd like to welcome you, Dr. George Ackerman.
Thank you both. I appreciate your time, and your audience means more than just a thank you. So I send our love and support to everyone out there, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. So if you would, he touched on your journey beginning as an attorney and the interesting twist that you went through because of your desire to advocate for others. If you would let us know a little bit about yourself and what that journey looked like.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've always been an advocate. I think it's what my mother instilled in me, to serve others and to help others who might not have a voice or struggle themselves. You know, you have to concentrate, if you have the disease or family, on that specific area. But before my world of caregiving and advocacy, I always wanted to help victims of crime, but I just wasn't sure how to do it. Had a lot of different opportunities and never dreamt I would be where I am today, whether telling the story of my mother's journey or in the field of criminal justice. But I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so unfortunately I grew up with a lot of crime in the area, and I always thought, well, you know, there are victims and then there are family members of victims. I need to step up and speak up for them if they feel forgotten by society. I was able to become an attorney, worked as an intern at the prosecutor's office, and also worked on the defense side afterwards, and got to see right up close the legal system. And I found that being a lawyer in Washington, D.C. and Florida, just didn't have the time I wanted to really help victims who just had too many cases. So it was like case to case to case. You can't even really talk. So decided to go another area, because the criminal justice system, not to get too complicated, is made up of law enforcement, courts, and corrections. That's the three big pieces to the criminal justice system. So I didn't really enjoy being in jail. I've been there before, not for myself. But, you know, I actually brought students on tours, and it wasn't always a good thing, because the individuals in prison, incarcerated, would throw things at the students, and I can't describe what. So it wasn't very fun. But I did appreciate the people that worked in the jails, and there's a lot of good people who are trying to make a better life for themselves even after. I've actually been a professor since 2006, and I actually teach in a prison through the online. It's correspondence, but those individuals also need to be able to move on, but also rehabilitate and gain education so they can better themselves, their families, and society. So being a police officer, I went to the Miami Academy in Florida and found, again, you get too many calls. So you're told, some ways to hand a brochure and move to the next call. So I still kind of struggled. That's not really what I wanted to do to help or make it. You can make an impact, but not individually, because you have to move on. So I was lucky enough to do my PhD and become a professor, but my dissertation was on aiding African American mothers who lost their loved ones due to murder in West Palm Beach, Florida. And it's an epidemic, not just in West Palm. It's just when you do a research study, you have to kind of pick a specific population and sample. But this little study could definitely be duplicated throughout the United States. And again, sometimes it's not just the police fault, it's also the community, it's also awareness. But a lot of times you have a victim of crime, sadly, the worst, murder. But the family members become secondary victims and often are forgotten. Maybe there's not enough time or people staff to help the victims. I mean, I know in Palm Beach County, we might have 3 to 6 victims advocates for 3 or 4 million people. It's not enough.
Right.
So I was really lucky again to work on that area. And then I had to shift to my world of caregiving. My mother had Parkinson's disease. And again, I never knew what it was. I heard the word for about 7, 8 years, but it never impacted my mother so bad that kind of crippled her life. Or we still aren't sure if she just didn't want to burden the family, which I think, and she kept a lot of it inside and didn't share it. When I took over the last 4 years, it was something that even a book that I wrote can't explain 100%. It definitely captures 99%. But in our short time, there's no way to get to it all. That's why I was really excited to share her journey forever through a book. But she went to over 15 experts. I'm not a medical doctor, but they all said you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. And there's a misconception, I think, because maybe she didn't die of Parkinson, but all the medicines definitely weren't good for anyone's body or mind. So one day she went for a special trial. People go for trials. They're hoping that it'll change or save other people. And that night she came back. I don't know if they drastically changed her medicine, but I had to rush over at 4 a.m., got a frantic call from my father in New York, and we're in Florida. My mother I found at 4 a.m. outside of her house moving her furniture, saying that she thought there's Nazis inside and they were going to harm her. So I didn't really know what to do. You might be trained in police, but that's not, you can't take a class on caregiving or being taught. You just have to do it. So I knew that, it was time to step up. Kind of did a lot of it on my own. I luckily have my wife's support and children, but we have, smaller family. She didn't really have anyone. She lived alone. So, I decided the best way to do it is to be there for her 24/7. So I sacrificed a lot of my health, which you're not supposed to do then as a caregiver and also today as an advocate, because I do all this today in her memory, but for those who are battling the disease and their families, but also in memory of the millions of people we've lost due to this disease. And that's what kind of keeps me going today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
So you said that she lived for 15 years with the disease, and it was the last 4 years when you had to step up and become a full-time caregiver. How was that was it just that quick of a transition, or were there plans in place? Had you all spoke about this prior to that transition?
Yeah, part of the problem is that we were told so many times that you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. So it was very hard to even plan. I mean, thankfully, my mother was very plan-oriented and time management like me. We take a list of, we make a list, we try to knock off each part, but then you have a backup plan. But with Parkinson's, it was out the window each time. But we did try, I wrote a list of everything, like from doctors to chiropractors to pain management, anything you could dream of. We even had, and this was a funny story, is a Florida finally allowed medical marijuana licenses, and here's a cop who's not really for all that stuff. I remember going. I went to the store before we decided to do the license because you have to be licensed, and I felt like it was Mission Impossible music, and I was knew there were like video cameras, but I was scared I'm going to get in trouble, even though everything was
right.
But I would have literally given part of my life to have my mother not have to suffer, because Parkinson's isn't just a disease where you go quietly. I mean, she was tortured the last 4 years, and one chapter is actually the final week. And I actually, for the last year of my mother's life, I kept a journal, and it's in the book because I never dreamt I'd have a book or write one, but I felt it was needed because there's so many people out there. I mean, the misconceptions about Parkinson's or just aren't aware. They used to think of it as an elderly man's disease, which isn't true. Females now have it increasingly. Right. The fastest growing neurological disease, not just in the U.S., but around the world. About 1 million people in the U.S., 10 million throughout the world. And also there's something called young onset, like Mr. Michael J. Fox, a famous actor. He had it in his 30s. He still has it today. Right. So it's not something that, can just go away. But she went from before those 4 years to walking several miles a week to 2 years in a cane, then to the walker for a year, then a wheelchair, and then bedbound for 7 days. So it was so fast and shocking. And we tried to plan, but you can't be really prepared. And that's the worry is it's every person with Parkinson's is different. So it doesn't mean what happened to my mother, our journey will happen to another person. But it's important to understand, to plan. My mother was incredible because we did a will. I was a power of attorney, and we had all the end of life funeral planned and done. Now, again, we didn't think she was going to pass, but you know how much grief on top of whatever loss it brings. So she was like literally a saint from heaven to have that, because I gave a speech at her funeral, and that was a nightmare. But I just imagine if, afterwards, it would have been 10. I could have another book on the mess after if you don't have it all properly.
Right.
Yes.
And we've both lost our mothers. Mine was very unexpected. It was a car accident. So I can attest to, it's like everything is different. And in the midst of that, the planning and things. So that's
mine was health issues, and kind of like it wasn't a disease necessarily, but she was just, we watched her deteriorate over time. And we had a discussion, and we were like, I don't know if what is better, the instant or watching them die.
Right. It was.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, because the last 7 days in Florida, we don't have death with dignity, so we treat our animals better than our loved ones, which I don't
yes, definitely.
And those 7 days, we didn't know if she was going to pass when, but she had only a heartbeat, but didn't have any ability to speak, eat, nothing. Wow. So it was like a scene out of a horror movie that you don't want to be.
Yes.
So with her diagnosis, were there signs or like what types of things signaled her that I need to go and be seen, or were there things, or was it something that was, just found during a routine checkup?
Yeah, there's different stages of Parkinson. Most people aren't even aware. They say there's 5. So the first stage is where, again, Parkinson's the movement disorder. So now I always say, imagine I want to put a thumbs up to both of you to thank you for today. And I consider you both family, because this is not easy topics. And this has to, the conversation that has to continue beyond this. But my brain is saying to put the middle finger up. Well, Parkinson's, the brain, you might be saying it, but you can't actually do the act. So I wouldn't be able to. So it's a movement disorder. And some of the symptoms, and again, I won't go too in depth with stages, but the first few, it's a body movement, like rigidity. Some individuals, like Michael J. Fox, have the external tremors. My mother had more internal. Also, something called bradykinesia. It's like the slowness of the body, difficulty walking, but you can still, and facial expression, but you can still live independently. Stage 2 gets more where walking and balance starts to become an issue, and that was a problem, because I knew if my mother fell, then she could have broken something. It would have been 10 times even worse. So it was already bad enough. Stage 3 is where, unfortunately, it's the mid stage where you start losing balance, slowness of movement, but you can still, again, eat and live. Unfortunately, the worst is stage 4 and then 5, where stage 4, you really can't. It's almost impossible to live alone because a lot of the daily things, even going to the bathroom, shower, are impaired. But the fifth stage is where now, which my mother had, is delusions and hallucinations come in, and those are more torture than the Parkinson's at times, because those are where you're not seeing reality. I mean, sometimes it's kind of, my mother would joke and say she saw her little dog and her mother and father, but they were passed away for decades. Mm-hmm. So I would just look at her and I would not laugh, but kind of don't know what to say. You know, you don't want to lie. Yeah. She would even ask me, you know, is she going to be here for her grandkids' weddings? And I said, I don't know. But that's and it doesn't just affect the, movement, it also affects the brain, but also loss of smell. Constipation with my mother was a big problem because the drug destroyed her stomach, so she didn't sleep 24/7. So we had to hire people so I could sleep for a minute, and it was $12,000 a month for several months because we swore to her we wouldn't put her in a home, and I have no problem with homes. I told my mother we wouldn't. There were days though where, like, if you read the book, I kind of gave up and wanted to put her in one, but I never ended up it because I'm not, a trained professional, and it was horrifying seeing her, like you both said, go from like healthy weight to almost bone thin. But also finally sleep disturbances, vision problems, and weight loss. And those are just, again, some of the issues or things that come from Parkinson.
Wow. Now, I know that, watching your parent just basically deteriorate over time. And I know that's fresh on your brain. And I know it can be challenging at times. It was challenging for you. But before, we wanted to know, who was Sharon before all of this? What was Sharon's life like before even the Parkinson's diagnosis? Who was she as an individual?
Yeah, like I think I mentioned, but the important thing is she was very caring. She thinks she was really selfless because she didn't want others to be burdened by her medical issues. Mm-hmm. She was a school teacher. We had nothing when I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York. We lived in a little teeny, looked like a hotel, a little teeny room. And I remember it was, neighbors everywhere, like a New York kind of Bronx tale De Niro movie.
Right.
She worked hard, really believed both my parents in education. I've kind of went overboard with it. I have, 3 masters, a law degree, the police, and the PhD. But I still have a lot to learn. Everyone you meet, you learn from their experiences. That's why I love being a teacher, professor, college, and upper middle, and doctoral, because I learn from live through the students. My career is kind of over in a way, and I can't do a lot physically due to my own back issues. So I love teaching because you get to experience, younger people and all ages, older, in the careers and moving to another career, or just moving up from, high school. My daughter actually, just funny, the other day we had a little meeting for her new school for middle school. It's kind of frightening, as you probably know, how quickly the kids grow, and then they're bigger than you, but their mouths are getting bigger. But my mother, she gave everything. She gave up. She quit her teaching career and her master's in psychology to take care of me and my brother. And I knew that, when it was time, I had to not quit, but sacrifice to help her. And some reason, even though through Parkinson's, she felt at ease a little when I was with her. She worried a lot. She was scared because of the disease and a lot of the medicines. They actually can cause psychosis and mental disorders. But when I was next to her, I felt terrible because I couldn't do much, but she felt safe. And that was one of the biggest things that meant a lot to me. And, it was hard because we had to hire towards the end, like a staff of people. And but the problem is, you take a woman who's been independent, lived alone her whole life because my parents were divorced, and now you're rotating 3 people, strangers in. Some of them didn't know what Parkinson's was. It's a whole chapter. It was a horrible, horrible experience in Florida. I feel like anyone could just say you're a caregiving company, hang up a store thing, and just charge a ridiculous amount of money and rip people off. But I fired like several companies. I probably went through over 200 aides, and finally, towards the last month or two, we found daytime and nighttime aides, and they loved my mother and she loved them. But by then, it was kind of too late. So my goal, though, with having those people wasn't that they take care of her, just to make sure she didn't fall. Because, like I said, if I'm not there, and I knew if she fell, would have caused even more problems on top of Parkinson's, on top of everything else. So that was important. But, me and my mother had a really, I think it wasn't odd, but some people think odd bond that she was my best friend. We would talk 10 or more times a day. She was the first person I called or turned to, whether I had something good, the bad, or the ugly. Remember, even during 9/11, we're from New York, and I was in law school in a criminal law class, ironically, and they let us out. I saw people in the atrium, like crying. I didn't know what was going on. I called my mother, and she told me the news firsthand. And it was a horrible situation, but every single thing from there to every graduation, she was right by my side. So today it's tough because holidays like Mother's Day, I don't have not here. So obviously it's we're in a struggle. I got to celebrate for my wife, but
right.
I think she gets upset sometimes because I don't like Mother's Day because and it's not like a normal thing. My mother, I think, lost 15 years of her life living and maybe 15 after she passed because Parkinson's, I think, took 30 years of her life. So, I hate the disease. I hate what it does to anyone. And some days and nights I don't sleep thinking of other people fighting this, and I don't want them to have to go through what our family did. And, again, I didn't ask for this. One area I would like to talk about is I'm not a foundation of purpose. It's just me. I have a website. I lost my best friend, who was my mother, but we don't accept money. Like literally, we don't accept anything except that people know we send our love and support, and I'm out there fighting for them. But I'm writing another book. It's done, which will probably take a year to edit. But there's a dark side, unfortunately, even to advocacy for Parkinson's or anything. I have to somehow. I'm a lawyer, but I feel like some days I have to prove myself that I don't want anything. It's really sad, 2024, you think we know there are people out there who can do stuff for community and don't want anything. But I just had an issue the other night. I don't know if I told you both, but I'm always trying to brainstorm, be innovative, and I don't get anything for this. Like I won't curse, but I was going to say anything. I don't get a damn penny and I don't want it.
Right.
I would have liked everyone to just be nice, but I got a weird email the other day, which it's over because I blocked the person. You get wacky people online. But my goal is you have big organizations, and I love them all for Parkinson, but I don't feel sometimes that regular Sally or, guy or gal is going to get money for maybe medicine. So I met many, many people, over 1,000 in the Parkinson's community through social media, and that's why it's incredible because it could bring people like us together for good reason. But so I decided, why not make a little section? It was going to be a little project and call it PWP, which means people with Parkinson's, and it's called Throughout the World. And I kind of got the idea from like America's Got Talent. And we're not going to have a show, but I thought, why not take like artists or athletes or all different people who unfortunately lost their life and career because of Parkinson's, but now have something else. So I love art, and my brother's an artist. So I said, why don't I put a little post on Facebook in a group. It was called, I won't say a lot, but if you look up art and Parkinson's, I'm sure you'll find it. And there's a lot of them out there. You won't be able to determine which specific. I don't want to start, getting them in trouble. But so it's, maybe 300-400 people, and they're artists. They have Parkinson's. So I say, why don't I just put a post and say, anyone out there, I'd like to put your art on my site and your website, and I want nothing in return. I got like inundated with beautiful, and it's all on the website now, and we're keeping it. So all it is you click on this one section under partners, and then you can see like art. You can contact the artist and their website. Nothing to do with me. So I feel like I'm kind of a conduit or just a person for awareness. So it was beautiful, and I kind of finished. I'm tired. I had to move to now. I'm looking into athletes and things. So again, it's all just for awareness. It's up there on my site free. We don't charge anything to look at it or to be on the site. And so I get this weird, nasty email from I guess there are administrators on Facebook, and it was very rude. It was like, I'm going to share it one day in my book, and I won't say the name of the person. I don't know who they are, but they wrote, we don't want, can you justify why you're asking people to put their art with you? We don't allow something like, it was a really rude word. It was almost like, not solicitation, but something accused. It was almost defamation as a lawyer. And obviously press delete and ignore it, but I wrote back and just said, I'm trying to help people. This is awareness, and we're supposed to be a family. Now, it got a little weird, so I just blocked them and moved on. I don't care because I'm done with it. But the sad thing isn't that one rude, negative person. It's that they're going to block those 200 or 300 people who I could have helped, and now I'll never be aware of them. They won't be aware of me, and share that around the world. And I have to tell you, the people who are on our site, they didn't have to be taken down. They're still there, and they become like family. So it's just sad, even in 2024. Now, that person, I don't know them, but they might have had a bad experience. I don't blame them, but you should probably be nice and just be a human being when you're
right.
I even said, if you want, feel free to look at my website, speak to 1,000 people who literally know me. And instead of doing that, the young lady or old lady or whatever was very rude too. So I decided to move on and forget it. But again, it's just an example. And that's, again, what my future book will be. It's I don't want to give too much, but it's going to actually, it's dedicated to the people like me in memory of all that we've lost due to Parkinson. But I don't have Parkinson's. I'm no longer an individual caring for someone alive with Parkinson, but I'm still a person. My mother still matters. And if we had brought back all the millions, not a million, I'm talking about like 10, 20 million people who probably lost a loved one due to Parkinson, this world would have been much better. Plus, we probably would have already had a cure. So that you have to, the lesson quickly, I don't want to take too much waste time with this because it's a little wacky, but you can never in anything, forget Parkinson's, whether it's in civil rights or life or even raising kids, in my view, again, you don't have to go with what I believe. You can never let one person ever stop you from a mission. And my mission is literally only to help awareness and find a cure for Parkinson's. I don't want anything else. Doing a blog on this, and I even edited my website. If you click on TogetherForSharon.com, click about us. I had to put a whole section about how we don't want to. It's like sad that you do it.
Yeah.
But I find it tougher to be not a foundation, and even though I don't want to be because I'm a lawyer, I know how to do it. But some days it's harder to like just kind of convince people that I want to help. And that's the dark side, I call it, of social media, and that'll be in my future book. So I just want to share it because it's kind of new to me and not happy about it. I actually was accused too, 2 weeks after my mother passed, that my mother didn't pass and I'm not real. And I share everything with you because it was hard, Again, I should have just moved on and went away, but I thought Together for Sharon would have 3 or 4 people. We've had over 35,000 people visit the site. So, you can't let 1 or 2 nuts in anything in life deter you. So I back up and fighting, and it's not going to stop me. So I just want everyone out there to know, we're real. I'm just me. One son lost his best friend due to Parkinson, but again, we don't want anything but for everyone to know that they're not alone. So, that's just society in a nutshell.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it speaks volumes that here your mom has been gone for 4 years, but you're still just as active and just as determined to help bring awareness and help find a cure. So that speaks volumes.
Yes, and it's unfortunate that there are people who just can't believe that there are people who actually want to do good in this world.
I think the problem is that, like, even horrifying things I don't want to bring up, like 9/11 or even COVID, there were criminals, cybercrime. But the thing is, I happen to be a lawyer and a police officer. I'm not, and I'm pretty ethical because I've left companies and places because I saw something weird and I reported it. I'm very, but the thing is, like, it's not Shark Tank. We don't want to sell anything. We're not like literally. Our show today might be shocking, but we're here just for awareness. You're not giving me anything. I don't want anything back except love, and to know everyone out there supported. So moving on. The case closed, and we keep fighting. But it is, it's a interesting society today. And again, it's the great thing. I left the world of politics because it was so fighting this. You can't even the other day, if you saw the news, even our representatives look like it's a kindergarten room. I don't I left that coming to Parkinson because it's bipartisan. We talked, maybe we can mention the national plan to end Parkinson's that just passed, but that's all bipartisan. But even it was over 400 majority voted for the bill. You got like 6 people. I won't go in. I don't know who they are, but they voted against. And part of me saying, like, how do you vote against?
What is it going to hurt you to help?
So for us, for our listeners, we're learning, how do we get more information and how do we get involved in helping to bring awareness and find a cure?
Yeah, I mean, one great way is to check the book out. It's on TogetherForSharon.com, and if we have a moment later, I can even read a little sentence or 2 about how my family was the only reason I got through it. I'm sure you both were there for each other. And I think without that kind of support, at least for me, I wouldn't even be able to speak to you today. And some days, even the cover of the book, it's my mother and me, and we're dancing at my wedding, which was one of my favorite memories of my life, because in those 2 or 3 moments, Parkinson didn't exist and it didn't matter. And we just talked and laughed, and it was just a moment. And even sometimes I say it, it's hard to even look at the cover, but she looked, beautiful in that moment. And Parkinson doesn't define you, but it can, harm your family, harm the person, but it can never take those memories away. So the book has a lot of resources, references. It tells my journey. It talks about caregiving, my mother's signs, and also a positive message. So I know we've talked a lot of kind of sad, tough things, but you have to talk about the tough topics to get to the good. Obviously, I lost my best friend, my mother, but today I've met some amazing people like both of you and your audience who really inspire me. Like I said, some days I don't sleep thinking about my mother and all those fighting, but then I get an email, a positive one, like from both of you who gave me this amazing opportunity. And I don't think it'll end with just our talk. I feel like we will keep in touch. And sadly, in a way, social media, you see each other. My wife hates when I say it, but I see some of the people I've become like a little family with on social media more than family. So it's important. But that's one resource. TogetherForSharon.com has so many resources. When I was going through the journey of my mother, I felt alone. I knew there was stuff out there, but I was confused and lost. So what I tried to do on the site is literally put references and organizations like the Michael J. Fox, where they're all over the U.S. and the world globally. So I work with people in the U.K. I just interviewed someone who's an expert in Parkinson's nurse in England. And it was a beautiful talk because it's like, I love the accent, and also it's just a different, it's a different world, but they all come together for the same purpose. So it's beautiful. And so there's resources on the website. You can read this. I've interviewed 600 people around the world, and every morning a new journey shows up. And that's also what inspires me to never give up. So you're going to have the 1,000 positive and the 1 negative, and got to just ignore the negative and keep pushing forward, because there's so many important people out there that need a voice. And if I could do anything to help it, then I'll continue to do that.
Right. That's right. And that person was a troll. And just like when we're on social media, you have trolls that just, their job is just to create havoc. So
shame, because you think about it for regular things, but not when you're talking about a good cause.
But exactly.
It's out there. I mean, I could do a show. I actually was a victim of ID theft, and I'm a lawyer and a cop, so it could happen to anybody.
Oh wow!
You can't ever stop because of that. So.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned maybe reading a part of the book. So we're coming to an end. So whatever you want to leave us with, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, I have 2 very quick, but chapter 4, I talk about how family support my wife, partner, and she actually wrote in the book too, like a chapter, which was really nice, because you see on the male perspective of caregiving, but we have to include the female because it's such strong. So it's just wrote, as I said, family has always meant a great deal to me. My family supported me throughout my growing up, my college years, and my wife helped me throughout this terrible journey. So it goes a lot more in depth, but it seemed to me the best, and took me under her wing, my mother, teaching me important life lessons, good values, and respect she had with her mother, grandmother, my grandmother Sharon. And I tried to emulate the same lessons to my children. And I think that's the number one thing about caregiving. I'm actually writing a little blog about it, is you have to support each other, husband and wife. You have to be there. There are days where I couldn't be there, and she understood. And, we've been together over 11, 12 years, which I don't know how it goes so fast. But even in the book, I write the first time my mother and my wife met. And, sometimes in-laws don't work out, but I was really lucky, because it's almost like when I met my wife, but the second my wife and my mother met, they became best friends. And that's something that meant the world, because, my wife wanted to take part in the caregiving and wanted to help. And some things us men, no offense, aren't good at. But my wife, my last year, my mother's life was tough because she just physically and mentally wasn't doing well. And my wife really tried, even though some days it was hard. But she brought in like a manicure person, a hair person, and just little teeny things that really made my mother feel alive again. And that meant the world to me. So I won't go much more, because then we'll all start falling apart. And I want this to be positive. Just on the last note, I'm so grateful for both of you and your audience. And I'm never going to forget our time together. I'm going to add the show to my site forever and share it around the world. But I do have one last message for everybody. We love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I will advocate for you, and together our voices are so much stronger. And I'm just getting started, and obviously I'm not, but I say that because every time I get a nice message from someone like the two of you, your audience, or someone out there is struggling that feels alone, that kind of re-energizes me there are days where I just say, I feel like I hit like maybe 10 shows and I feel I didn't even do my own work and see my family and feel like a truck might have rolled over me, but I kind of just dust it off, jump back up and keep fighting, because until we have a cure, there's just so many people who need us. And that's why I do this. I don't want anything in return, but again, to send our love and support, and we're here for you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us.
Definitely.
Thank you for the awareness, and we definitely will make sure all the information is there for listeners. We've been on your site over the past couple of days looking at the different resources and the different voices that are there from others. So it's definitely a wealth of resources there and information. So we thank you for your time and for sharing with us.
Yep, and the son's journey.
I appreciate it.
And we're going to help promote however we can and push your stuff, George. You don't want anything in return, but you're getting love.
Right.
Well, everyone needs that, and
right.
Just so you know, I'm sure that independent publishing is tough. The big problem and struggle with awareness is just not enough support for Parkinson's, and that's what we're trying to do. But big publishers and things don't. Even when I did my research for my book about policing and Parkinson's coming in the future, police even, I'll talk if we ever, we talk when that book's out, but it wasn't easy because they're kind of questioning my intent. And I'm trying to help, and the book is complete pro-police. It's not about that. I'm just trying to bring awareness. But even a few people are like, what's Parkinson's? This is law enforcement. Why are you doing this? And it's like, here we go again. It's like you got one that doesn't want to bring change and a world that needs change. And it's not just in Parkinson's, obviously. We have all the protesting, the craziness in the world, and some of it's good, some of it's not. Right. I don't know. Again, that's a different topic, but we just have to keep raising our voice for awareness. We have to keep voicing it for those who can't, and I think we'll come closer to a cure.
All right.
Well, George, we want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sending love out to you, your family, your wife, and may you continue to fight, my brother.
Thank you both, and again, I consider you family, so you're stuck with me now forever.
All right, yes, sir.
We're not displeased. We're not displeased
at all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Beyond I Do podcast.
Please make sure to like this episode and also subscribe to our podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at the Beyond I Do podcast.
And until next time, we will holler at y'all.